Hey, it's you, man, from KC95 here. Good evening and welcome to Toasted Tavern. Your host, Scott Tobin, and the man called Wags are ready to bring you the night in sports. So pull up a stool, grab a drink, and let's get toasted.
Good evening. Welcome into the Toasted Tavern. My name is Michael Wagenknecht, joined alongside by Scott Tobin. And just a quick preface, this is a pre-recorded show. We both got sucked into a couple of doubleheader baseball games today. So this is a pre-recorded show. So some of the stuff we may be talking about might be a little bit off from what has happened in the games that are going on Sunday. Obviously, the Cardinals a doubleheader and the St. Louis Blues in Game 7 of their first-round matchup against the Winnipeg Jets. So we will be talking about those teams, but just take it with a grain of salt because, you know, we're working to pretty much get those games out there anyway. I didn't lose you, Scott, did I?
There we go. I got you. You were frozen on me for a minute.
Okay, cool. So what we were saying, we're both working today, but we've got a lot of stuff that we still need to talk about in regard to these teams because they are both in critical moments of their seasons. Obviously, the Blues getting into a Game 7, a chance to move on to the second round. The Cardinals still fresh in their season, but trying to turn things around here a little bit. Scott, it's been a little while since we got a chance to talk because we've both been busy, but how are things been going for you? And kind of how have things been looking from your perspective on the side of the Cardinals? We'll dig into it a little bit deeper, but kind of want to get a quick reaction from you on them.
It's been up and down and really kind of disjointed so far. There's good things, there's bad things. That's really kind of hard to really describe what this ball club has been for the first month of the season.
It has been a bit of a struggle for sure, and we will dive into that as we get deeper into this show. But we're going to start right off the bat. The game's going on as we technically speak, since we are recorded right now, the game between the Blues and the Jets. Game 7, a big one. Obviously, winner will move on to the second round. And it's been a very interesting series because the home teams have won every single game leading up into this game tonight. And it seems like it's been a tale of two teams in those games as well. I mean, the road team in all of these games has absolutely struggled, while the home teams have taken advantage of the home ice, advantage that they have gotten. The one thing that has kind of been separate from all of that is the fact that the Blues have been able to kind of, even on the road, not let things get too far away from them, whereas the Jets have yanked their goalie in all three games here in St. Louis. So kind of looking at the series as a whole, what have you seen in this matchup between these two teams, and what can we expect from this game, regardless of the outcome?
It's been crazy. It's been this, like you said, it's been the story of two totally different teams, home and away. Both teams have looked way better at home than they have on the road. You want to kind of pull it back to the Cardinals real quick. It kind of reminds me of the 87 World Series with the Cardinals and the Twins, where both teams won all the home games in that series. That's kind of how this is played. I mean, they look like completely different teams, home and away. Although, like you said, the Blues have at least stayed close to Winnipeg up there, whereas when Winnipeg has come to St. Louis, it has not looked so pretty for them and their very talented goalie, who's really had some struggles on the road. You really wish Game 7 was in St. Louis, the way the Blues have played this first three home games. But it's going to be a challenge, but I think it's going to be a really entertaining, fun, physical battle in Game 7 in Winnipeg today.
Well, 15 straight home victories for the Blues, including the playoffs. So they are on a heck of a run. And if they do make it into the second round, the team that they will face, whether it's Colorado or Dallas, they're going to have to be very, very conscious of the fact that in St. Louis, it is going to be a tough sled to get a victory there. And you talk about the star goaltender for Winnipeg. Connor Hellebuyck, Vezina Trophy winner, Vezina Trophy finalist again this year, a guy that has played phenomenally the last handful of years in the regular season. But then you get into his postseason numbers and even to an extent his world hockey experience numbers as well. He was the starter for the United States and the Four Nations. I don't think he played poorly in the Four Nations, but he still did end up getting beaten by Jordan Binnington in that final game. In the playoffs, he's gone so many games. I honestly completely forgot to grab the number, but he had something of like in the last 14 road games in the playoffs, he's given up at least 4 goals in all of those games, and all of them have resulted in losses. He's a guy that has struggled mightily on the road in the playoffs, and the Blues have found something on him in this series that they didn't necessarily have during the regular season, but they have been able to expose it here in the postseason. And in Game 7, it's something they're going to have to continue to definitely take advantage of, because it's a tough place to play in Winnipeg.
Yeah, it definitely is. And with a goalie that's that talented, to have a stretch like that long on the road, do you think it's more mental than physical at this point, that it's in his head that he's struggling on the road, and he just kind of, once one thing happens, it just kind of snowballs on him, which is what definitely it seemed like has happened in the 3 games in St. Louis. But I wonder if it's more of a mental thing at this point, where it just once it starts to snowball, he just kind of breaks.
It has to be, because at home he is completely locked in. I mean, we've seen it in this series in the first 3 games in Winnipeg that he has been dominant, and a part of that is the credit to the Jets, making sure that they play the style that they want to play at home. Obviously, they get the last change, so they can kind of set matchups the way that they want to, and they've played very, very well in front of him at home. But he has been locked in, and I think it is that mental aspect of it that once he gets onto the road, he's not in that home confine. He doesn't have the home fans chanting behind him. I mean, you listen to the St. Louis crowds, and they keep saying, we want Connor after he's been pulled in the last 2 games, because they know that they can get to him. And that's why you look at this and you go, yeah, the home team has won every single game in this series. But when I want a guy in a Game 7, even on the road, to win a game, I want a Jordan Binnington, because he's proven that he's been able to do it. He did it twice in TD Garden, once at the end of the 2019 Stanley Cup, Four Nations tournament this year. He's been able to do it in opposing venues. A tough one here in Winnipeg, but if you were to tell me I could pick between those 2 guys to be my Game 7 starter on the road, I would go Jordan Binnington every time.
Yeah, I think you absolutely have to go Jordan in this case, because like you said, he's got the track record. He's proven that he's got ice in his veins when it comes to these do-or-die games. And so I don't think there's anybody in the league really that you would rather have in goal in a game like this. It's do-or-die, season's on the line, than Jordan Binnington right now. And that says a lot. When we've talked multiple times about should he be benched, should he be traded, but when it comes right down to it, he's the guy you want in the net in these kind of games.
And I've been a staunch supporter of Jordan Binnington pretty much the entire way, even throughout the struggles, because again, when you get to those moments, those do or die moments, he's the guy you want in net. And yes, there's been times where he's looked lackadaisical, where he's looked just not in the games. But I keep going back to the point that not everybody is going to be locked in every single game of the season. It's a long season. Those things happen. You see not just goalies, but you see forwards and defensemen sometimes just have bad games, and they just cannot lock in, and it happens. But at the end of the day, in these moments when a team is able to get to this point, you want a guy like Binnington in net. And yeah, you could have sat there and said they could have gotten a plethora of talent for him, the last couple of years. And, Toronto is one of those teams that would have loved to have taken him. But I would rather take the known quantity than the potential of star power that could have been brought in for Jordan Binnington. So yeah, maybe that makes me an old stuck in the mud, because I want to hang on to the guys I got, but this is the moment that you look and you go, I'm glad that JB's in our net.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we talked about it at the trade deadline. I was one of those people. It was like, if this team's going to rebuild, do you maybe move on because you've got a guy like Hofer? But again, when you look at it, you talk about track record and you talk about what they've done in history. Again, it comes back to the fact that there is nobody else that you want in that net other than Jordan Binnington when it's your season's on the line.
And I loved your point, though, at that is at the trade deadline, if they are talking about a rebuild, do you move him? It wasn't, oh, he's playing terribly, get rid of him. It was, if this ownership group is thinking rebuild, then yes, that's probably a move that you have to at least think about making. It wasn't I don't like this guy, let's get rid of him. It was that mindset. I just look back on it and I go, this ownership group and this leadership group thought this team was a playoff caliber team from the start. So you knew that as they were going on that little bit of a run before the break, before that trade deadline, that there was no way that they were thinking, yes, they floated Braden Shen out there. And tell you what, if they would have moved Braden Shen, the Blues never would be in this position anyway. Talking about his impact on this series, that's another move that they did not make that you look back on, you go, yeah, that was some forward thinking that they thought they could get into this point, and now you look at it and you go, damn, Braden Shen has been a beast in this series, if not point-wise, but just setting the tone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to, going back to your last point, you have to give Army and the ownership group a heck of a lot of credit for not panicking in the trade deadline, especially considering the fact that you just lost Colton Parayko for potentially the season at the time. We just weren't sure. That they didn't say, okay, we're gonna throw in the towel on this year. We're gonna trade these guys and we're gonna rebuild. Give them a lot of credit. They didn't do that. They had faith in this team. They had faith that this team was going to turn things around and get on a roll and keep that roll going, and they did. And so they deserved a ton of credit. I mean, we love to rip ownership and GMs and presidents apart when things aren't going well. When they do something smart and they do the right thing, we need to give them a lot of credit for it too, and they deserve a ton of it for that.
Well, not only that, but you got to give credit to Doug Armstrong for going out and getting a guy like Cam Fowler, a move that at the time everybody was like, "What are you doing? You're bringing in another veteran defenseman. This is just asinine. Why are you doing this?" But he has been the linchpin to this team. It's almost like when he brought in Jay Bouwmeester, and I don't think Bouwmeester made quite of an immediate impact as what Cam Fowler has done for this team, but he is a guy that has really kind of settled things down and been that star player that you didn't know you were missing. I mean, this guy has points in every single game in this series, and sometimes not just 1 point. He's a guy that has put up multiple points. He's scored goals. He's assisting. You look at his time with Anaheim, and he spent his entire career with Anaheim up into this season. This year, in 17 games with Anaheim, 0 goals, 4 assists, and a -7. In the 57 games he's played with the Blues, including the playoffs, 11 goals, 35 assists, and a +19 rating. Now, granted, that's because he has different players around him making things happen, but it's almost like a complete mind shift when he came in here, and now he is the guy that you look at. He's got a potential of being an MVP playoff kind of player.
Yeah, and that's why you always say, you can't take for granted when a GM goes out and gets a crafty veteran guy, even when they've struggled on bad teams. You never know when you bring that guy into a team that's got a chance and he's got a chance to make a postseason run, how that can rejuvenate their careers and really light a spark. We've seen that happen lots of times over the years with the Cardinals, and we've definitely seen that happen with Cam Fowler. Yeah, just another really smart move by Army.
And part of that leads into the style of play that this team is playing, and what has been successful for them in the playoffs is getting their defensemen involved. It's something that we saw in 2019 when they won the Stanley Cup. And it really is something that we've seen when this team has been successful, not just in years that they've gone into the playoffs, but when they go on their runs. This year was the 12-game winning streak. Other years it's been a shorter winning streak. But when this team has put together wins, it's because their defensemen get involved offensively. And in the losses in Winnipeg, this playoff series, defensemen just 6 assists. In the home games, the 3 home games, 3 goals and 11 assists. And that right there is got to be the mindset for this team in this game 7 is we've got to get our defense involved, and we got to get them involved early, because when they have produced points in bunches in games, they have won here in the playoffs. And I know it's a small sample size, but in any game that this team has 3 points or more from a defenseman, they're 3-0.
Yeah, that's impressive. When you can get that kind of scoring from your defense, and when you can get all-around play from all of your lines, you're not just counting on your top line or your top 2 lines. You're getting all kinds of production from your 3rd and 4th lines. And like you said, your defense is scoring. That just makes you such a well-rounded and dangerous team no matter who's on the ice. That makes it really scary for anybody that you're going to face if you would happen to advance and get to the next round.
And you talk about the ability for multiple lines to produce, and the big emphasis has been on that WTF line, the Walker, Toropchenko, Foxa line. And you and I both remember back in the mid 2000s when this team had a really good 3rd and 4th line. It was the muckers, the grinders, the ones that teams did not want to play against. In that era, those were the 2 best lines on the Blues team. And yeah, it won them some games. It created some excitement. But going into the playoffs, you can't win a series with your third and fourth lines being the best lines out there. This WTF line is one of the best lines on this team for the style of play that they're playing. They are disruptive. They are making things happen. Hell, Nathan Walker scored his first 3 Stanley Cup playoff goals in the last 2 games. So he is starting to produce a little bit. Toropchenko is scoring. Fox hasn't scored, but he's making things happen as well. But the thing that's different about this team versus those other teams is that while the fourth line of this team is very, very good and in a very top level kind of line, to your point, all 4 lines are producing. And when your top line is producing and allowing that fourth line to go to work, that is what makes a team a better playoff contributor. And the fact that that top line, for the most part, has had a guy that has only played a handful of games in the NHL and is producing as well. I mean, even if they lose this game tonight, I think you have to look at it as a complete win for this franchise going forward, because you've got playoff experience for some of these young guys now, and the team's moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. And a couple of weeks ago, when we talked about the fact that Jimmy Snuggerud was coming up, we were kind of wrong when we said, oh, he'll probably get a game and then he'll sit and watch. It's not exactly how this has worked out.
Not at all. Not at all. I will be perfectly honest. I did not see them putting him into playoff games in the level of play that he has gotten, the time that he's gotten, and the line that he has been on. And it just, again, it's a credit to what Doug Armstrong and Alex Steen have seen in him. It's a credit to what Jim Montgomery has seen in him as well. And it's a credit to what Jimmy Snuggerud has done to this point in his career as well. He's a guy that, like Dalibor Dvorsky, is the future of this franchise. And for Dvorsky, you could argue that maybe he should be up here getting some reps and getting into games as well. But he put in a lot of time in Springfield this year. And with the way his contract is and trying not to bring him up and down too many times to kind of preserve some of that flexibility, it sucks that he's not getting a chance to experience this, but now he's going to get to go play in the World Juniors. He's going to get some more international experience, and he's got a shot to make this team next year. With Snuggerud having to wait to the end of the college season and not being able to sign a contract that would allow him to go down to the AHL, you had to get him into some games to see what you got. But the fact that he was able to jump in as quickly and efficiently as he has been able to do, it just shows you why the excitement was around him. There are a lot of people, myself included, that weren't sure exactly what he was going to translate to in the NHL. And his strength on skate, his board play, his stick handling ability, everything is there at an NHL level quality. And he's only going to get better as he gets stronger. So the fact that he's been doing what he's doing and being successful, I'm excited to see what the future brings for him.
Oh, absolutely. But let's just throw a word of caution out there to Blues fans who are watching Jimmy Snuggerud right now and are like, oh my God, this is the next thing. Remember, next year is going to be his first full year in the league. Teams are going to have a look at him. Don't be shocked if the second year he has a little bit of a struggle. That's natural. Don't panic and be ready to run him out of town 10 games into next year. Just throwing that out there because we know it's going to happen.
We don't need to make him cry like we made Jordan Kyrou cry, even though it ended up producing a very successful season for Jordan Kyrou. I mean, we should be able to learn from the mistakes. We put pressure on a young player to produce, and you saw what happened. He struggled. He tried to do too much. Snuggerud is in that same vein. But I will say this. The fact that he played at Minnesota for college, I think that pressure was already there. And I think he's figured out how to handle that and how to deal with that. That's not to say that there should not be a grace period him in his second year, first really full year in the league. I think, you cannot expect him to be the leading scorer on this team. But at the same time, you look at it and you go, this kid has dealt with pressure the last handful of years. I think he's going to be all right. Now let's see how he plays in a full season, how he interacts with a Dvorsky if he ends up playing on the same line as him. And again, I know that we're playing right now, but at the same time, I look at it, I go, man, I cannot wait to see what the future of this team looks like, because those two guys we're talking about, there's still 5, 6, 7 guys down in Springfield that are going to make impacts in the next couple of years with this team as well. And it just blows my mind how exciting it can be.
Yep. I'm just trying to caution people, because, there are going to be people that are like, Jimmy Snuggerud didn't score 1,000 points this year. He's no good. We got to get rid of him. Trade him now. Run him out of town.
He's not on pace to break Ovechkin's goal-scoring record. What is going on?
Yeah, it's going to happen. People, fans get overly passionate sometimes, and their expectations exceed reality very often.
And we've seen it everywhere. We see it with this Blues squad. We see it with the Cardinals. We see it with everything. It's if it's not an immediate, win, then all of a sudden it's oh, woe is me. I mean, I got to get this off my chest because I'm a part of, like you, part of different groups, fan groups and things like that. The amount of times that you see comments being made after the first 10 minutes of a game where people are like, what the hell is this guy doing? Why is he out there? I can't believe he made that play. Get him off the bench. He shouldn't even be playing in this game. You're like, it's 10 minutes into a game. And yes, if in 10 minutes the score is 7-0, okay, you know what? You have every right to complain. But if it's a 1-0 game or a 2-1 game in the first 10 minutes and you're going nuts about something that happened, there is still like 50 minutes left of a game to be played. Let's see things play out a little bit. This team has been known, and this goes for all the teams these teams have been known to come back late in games or maybe have slow starts. And again, if it's a big blowout lead all of a sudden, yes, you have the right to complain about it because those things shouldn't happen. But these teams have the ability to come back. They've got time to come back. There's adjustments that can be made. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. You don't have to go crazy in the first 10 minutes of a game and be like, what are we doing?
Oh, and it's every sport. Like you said, we see it with the Blues. We see it with the Cardinals. How many times do we see it during the college football season with Mizzou? Oh, Brady Cook's horrible. Get him out of there. How many times in the last 2.5 years did we watch Brady Cook come back in the second half in the fourth quarter and bring this team back? But, get down by 3 points. He's horrible. Pull him out of there. Where's Sam Hoare? It's like, what are we doing here, people?
Well, I'll say this, and I don't invoke this lightly because we know what the Patriots did to us here in St. Louis. But if there should ever be a game to look at and say, never give up on anything, 28-3. That's all I have to say. 28-3. And that's all you need to know.
And hopefully our friend Anthony Stalter is not watching as you're talking about that.
You know what? I think he can still agree with the fact that games are never over.
Yes, I know, but it still kills him. As a Falcon fan, it still kills him to hear anybody talk about it.
Hey, I still can't. I mean, I liked the Colts, and I couldn't get around the fact that Adam Vinatieri ended up kicking for them. So, I get it. I get it, Stalter. I get people that it still sticks with. I still can't stand the Patriots for that last-second loss in 01. It just doesn't. I wasn't even old enough to really remember, but I don't like the Twins for what they did to us. So, I get all of that.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh boy. Well, again, Game 7 going on currently as you guys hopefully are watching this, maybe in the intermission. Hopefully the Blues are up at this point. But regardless of how this game plays out, I still think you have to consider this season a success. I know that they start off slowly. They got down near the bottom of the league, but then being able to put together the run that they put together to get themselves into playoff contention, the moves that they made to amplify the roster without necessarily hamstringing them for the future. Awesome job there. They get into the playoffs. They push the Jets to the absolute limit, regardless on if they win or lose. You look at it and you got to say that this was a successful season and the future is 100% bright for this team.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if anybody, no matter what happens in this game, if anybody says, oh, this season wasn't that good, this team is disappointing, this guy needs to go or that – I mean, think about where we were a couple of months ago, and then think about where we were 2 or 3 weeks ago when we were like, man, if they could just get in the playoffs, it would be good. And then when we found out we were playing Winnipeg, we're like, oh, it might be a 4-game sweep, but at least these guys will get some experience. I mean, you pushed, no matter what happens, you pushed the best team in the league during the regular season to a Game 7, and you dominated in at least 3 of those games. So, I mean, it's absolutely a win. I mean, it's 100 times better than I think most people could have ever expected for this season, especially, like I said, where we were a month or two ago.
Well, even at the beginning of the season when ownership and leadership was like, yeah, this is a playoff quality team, and everybody was like, what are you talking about? This team has no identity. They don't know what they're doing and all of that. So, yeah, just the fact that, again, leadership had the vision. They knew what they wanted to do, and the guys went out there and they produced.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a credit to everybody in that organization from top to bottom, to ownership, to coaches, to the players, to Just absolutely everybody, because again, like we said, it was a heck of a season. And if you're a Blues fan, you have to be really, really excited, like you said, about the future, no matter what happens in this game.
And how does Jim Montgomery not be in the Coach of the Year conversation? Not a finalist in the Coach of the Year. Yes, I know he got fired from Boston, but Boston tanked after he left, and the Blues went on their run. So how do you not get any consideration for Coach of the Year?
Well, you were a big-time coach in a big-time market on the East Coast, and you didn't do real well, so you made some people in the media on that side of the country not happy, so they're not going to vote for you, especially if you go to the Midwest and then suddenly turn things around and look like a genius.
Well, it's also the Midwest, so no one on the East or West Coast looks at the Midwest anyway. Right. So it's not like, it's you kind of go there to die apparently, but not so much, because not only have they been successful, they've drawn the eye of John Gruden as well. How about that? He's been all over the place. He's now a Blues, Cardinals, and Battlehawks fan.
Go Gruden. We need somebody to represent the city nationally. I guess there's nobody better than Coach Gruden, right?
Well, yeah, and you know what? I did see this the other night. I haven't researched it deeply enough. I want to say, did he say that he started his coaching career down at SEMO?
I believe he did. I believe, at least as a grad assistant. I think he started as a grad assistant and kind of interned as coaching. I think that's where he began, and he may have had a paid position there, but I'm pretty sure he at least started in that role.
So I get the whole St. Louis connection, because he, down at SEMO, you do come up to St. Louis every so often. You got recruiting and all of that. So that was a little tidbit that I didn't know about from John Gruden. So it does make it a little bit more easily to see why he, kind of gravitated toward this St. Louis sports program. But at the same time, with him being with Barstool now, and he's getting boxes of stuff from teams all across the country. I mean, I guess he's a fan of everybody that sends him gear.
Yeah, but you don't see him doing the hype videos that he's done for the Blues, which has been pretty impressive to see.
So we've had Ric Flair, we've got John Gruden. I mean, we've got the bad boys of support in a sense going for us.
There you go, definitely.
All right. Well, Blues in action against the Jets. We hope, fingers crossed, that they're able to knock out the Jets and take down the President's Trophy winner. The Cardinals, on the other hand, they are floundering just a little bit. And again, they're in a doubleheader on Sunday against the Mets. Saturday's game was rained out. So 2 against the Mets, who they haven't beaten yet this year. And honestly, most of those games weren't even close up in New York or on Friday night as well. This team had some promise early on, and they've slipped a little bit. But it's odd, because we've talked about this in the past. You either get offense or you're getting pitching. You haven't really gotten both at the same time for an extended period. And right now, surprisingly, we're getting a little bit more of that pitching angle than we are the offense. It's starting to level out just a little bit, and I think the offense is rising back up. But the fact that you've kind of been ping-ponging back and forth between those two explains why you've got an under 500 record and why you're sitting 6 games back of the Cubs right now.
Well, and the Cubs have been really, really hot. And I heard again today, they have the easiest easiest schedule in Major League Baseball for the rest of the season, which doesn't really make sense, but I guess they do. And their offense has been on a roll in Chicago early in the season. We'll see if it continues for them. Going back to the Cardinals, it doesn't really make sense. They've played a really uneven schedule, because they played really, really well at home. I know they lost 9-3 last night, but they were 10-5 at home going into that game. And 3 of the games they'd lost at home, they lost in extra innings. Mm-hmm. So, they'd been really, really competitive at home. And for the most part, really, really competitive on the road. If you go back and look at the games they lost on the road, they lost the 2 games in Boston that were bad. They lost the first game, I think, by 5 runs. And then that Sunday night game, the Miles Michaelis pitch that got really, really ugly. But you look at the rest of those games on the road, for the most part, they've been 2 or 3 run games. A lot of them have been 1 or 2 run games that have come down to the bottom of the 8th, bottom of the 9th, where a couple of people in the bullpen had blow-ups and games got away from them. A couple of those guys are in the minor leagues right now. But, they've been in most of the games, other than probably 4 all season. They've been right there in all of those other games. So it's not like they're getting blown out on a nightly basis. They've played really competitive. You look at their stats, and it really doesn't make sense, because they're at the right around the top in the National League in batting average. They're right around the top of the National League in on-base percentage. They're right around the top in stolen bases. Their defense is right around the top. Their starting pitching ERA, for the most part, has been, top to middle in the National League. Their bullpen, Helsley's been good. The middle relief has not been so great, which was a big problem in some of those games. But, for the most part, when you look at the numbers they put up as a collective team, you're like, their record should be better than what it is. And again, it goes back to some of the guys in the bullpen not doing their jobs correctly. And then, other than that, the hitting has slowed down a little bit. Early in the season, they were really, really clutch. And like you said, it's picked back up again a little bit. For the most part this year, they've done a pretty good job with runners in scoring position. Mm-hmm. They've hit almost as many. I think last year they said they'd hit 10. They hit 10 three-run homers all year long last year. They've hit 8 of them already this season. So they're hitting home runs with runners on base. They're stealing bases. Victor Scott's second in the National League in stolen bases, third in baseball. So you're getting that production. The problem that you're running into is some of the guys that are supposed to be providing pop for this ball club are not necessarily living up to the hype. You look at Wilson Contreras, his batting average is starting to go up a little bit, but he's got 3 home runs and 10 RBIs, I believe, which is really good for a catcher. Not really the numbers you want to see your starting first baseman put up, which was kind of the reason why I questioned making him an everyday first baseman, because he's a good hitter for a catcher. I'm not sure he's got enough offensive ability to be a really quality first baseman. And so you say, okay, well, let's see. We got Luken Baker and Alec Burleson. Luken Baker got 2 RBIs on a double in his very first at-bat of the season. He hasn't driven home a run since. Alec hasn't hit a home run yet either, which is supposed to be his big thing. Alec Burleson is hitting 240. He has 6 RBIs, has 1 extra base hit, hasn't hit a home run. So, Paul, you take those 3 guys that are your first basemen. You've got 3 home runs. You've got 18 RBIs, and they're hitting a combined 245. Paul Goldschmidt, 3 home runs, 17 RBIs, he's hitting 365. Which one of those guys would you rather have?
Oh, I'd rather have Paul Goldschmidt for sure. And you and I were talking a little bit about this during the week last week about, why the decision was made to let Goldie walk. And, at the time that it happened, when they were talking about not going back to re-sign him, not bringing him back, the mindset was a complete reset for this franchise. Was Goldie's going to go, we're going to trade Arenado. Yeah, we're going to keep Contreras because, we need a veteran on this team, and we're going to start to bring in the youth. Well, now you look at it and you go, okay, you didn't trade Arenado. You really didn't make any moves, but at the same time, you're also not infusing the youth like you thought they were going to do as well. So where was the harm in bringing back a guy like Goldie? Because not only offensively, and Contreras hasn't done poorly over at first base defensively. It's not like it's been a huge drop-off in the defensive quality over there. But again, you still got a young player at shortstop in Mason Wynn. At some point, you still got younger players at that second base position. It'd be nice to have a Gold Glove quality first baseman over there that can help cover up some of those mistakes and give you chances. And now, you add in that offensive capability that he has. And this is a completely different team. The record could be above 500. You could be right up there at first place if you had that consistency from the first base side of things. But again, because this franchise was so indecisive on how they wanted to move forward this offseason, you're kind of left in the lurch looking back on, man, be great to have him here. But, they said that they were moving in a different direction. But at the same time, you've got the Nolan Arenado still over at third base, who's been really good this year. He came in slimmed down. He's hitting pretty well. His defense has been exactly as advertised. But now you sit there and you go, well, if we've got that, if we had Goldie, we would be in contention.
Yeah, and this goes back to what we talked about with fans overreacting and the media overreacting. First half of last season, Goldschmidt wasn't good. There's no question about it. He was striking out way more than he ever had in his life. The power wasn't there for early in the first half of the season. And the media driven first part, and then the fans jumped on board. Oh, he's too old. Cardinals can't re-sign him. It's going to be a huge mistake. It's going to be another Matt Carpenter. Can't re-sign him. His numbers are going down. We got to run him out of town. So then The media didn't want him here. The fans didn't want him here. Got to get rid of Goldschmidt. Can't bring Goldschmidt back. Never mind the fact that from the All-Star break on, he hit almost 300 and had 15 home runs and almost 50 RBIs the second half of the season, and his slugging percentage was back to Paul Goldschmidt-like. His strikeout rate went down. He started looking more like Paul Goldschmidt, but everybody had already decided that, oh, we got to get Paul Goldschmidt out of here. Well, okay. So then, and going back to your point, the Cardinals thought, okay, we move on from Goldie. We move on from Kittredge. Arenado's going to agree to go anywhere. Well, that didn't exactly happen. They thought they had the trade to Houston worked out. It wasn't going to happen, and Nolan decided he'd rather be here than go there. They thought, okay, Goldie's going to be gone. Arenado's going to be gone. Contreras and Gray are going to want to leave because they're not going to want to be here for a building process. They both said, oh, you gave us no trade contracts. We're not going anywhere. So then you're stuck. Cardinals don't really want him here. I mean, and to be totally honest with you, the reason Wilson Contreras is playing first base is because the Cardinals thought, they say, okay, you're going to stay here. You're not going to be a catcher anymore. They thought he would say, okay, go ahead and trade me. He didn't. He said, okay, I'll play first base. You can pay me $20 million to be the first baseman here. I'll do that. And they're like, oh, crap, now what do we do? Because now all of a sudden, you can't get more bats for Gorman at third base. You can't move Burleson to first base. What do you do with Herrera and Paez as your catchers? What do you do at DM? You're just stuck because these guys aren't going anywhere, and you gave them no trade contracts, which you shouldn't have. You shouldn't. I mean, the contract they gave Contreras was a bad deal in the very beginning. So they're just stuck now. And, you're not going to be able to move him because, he's not – nobody's going to take him as a catcher. Nobody would take him as a catcher 2 years ago. They're not going to do it now. And because, like I said, he's not going to put up the offensive numbers of a normal first baseman, nobody's going to say, oh, yeah, we'll give you $20 million to come here and play first base. And he's not really a DH either because, again, he's a 250, 260 hitter who's going to hit between 18 – he's only hit 20 home runs twice in his career. He's a 250, 260 hitter, 15 to 20 home runs, 65, 70 RBIs a year. That's great for a catcher that's playing 120 games a year. Not so great if he's your first baseman that is supposed to be one of your power positions. So they're kind of in trouble there. You're getting production out of Lars Nootbaar. He's exceeded everybody's expectations, I think, in the first month of the season. He's set records for walks and on-base percentage for a Cardinal leadoff hitter. So I got to give Newt credit for that because I didn't see it coming. Brendan Donovan has just proven that he is one of the best all-around players in baseball. I mean, he does everything exactly the way you want him to, almost perfectly, no matter where you put him in the lineup, no matter where you put him defensively. He's as good as it gets. You've got a really good young shortstop in Mason Wynn who started off really slow and has hit, like crazy after he started 0 for 20. He missed a couple of weeks, but he's got 4 home runs now, and he's driving home runs. You've got the center fielder of the future in Victor Scott. Everybody said, oh, is he going to hit? Kind of like Mason Wynn last year, after his rookie year where they're like, oh, I don't know if this guy can hit. Well, Victor Scott kind of went through last year what Mason Wynn went through in his little run 2 years ago. And then he came into this year and understood what he had to do. And he looks like a really, really good offensive player, not to mention a potential Gold Glove center fielder. And watching that kid run is more fun than just about anything in a ballpark because, I mean, he can absolutely fly. So you've got some really good building blocks there. And then you go, okay, you're going to get Herrera back probably this week. His first game back in AAA yesterday, he hit a 3-run homer. So I think he's right, he's right on the verge of being right back in the lineup. And there's a guy that could potentially be a middle of your order bat for a long, long time. Now you got to get Jordan Walker figured out. It looked like he was going to be okay at the beginning of the season, and then he's really struggled. He's hit some balls hard right at people, but he's back to kind of flailing at that off-speed pitch. So you got to get him figured out, and you've got to get the Nolan Gorman situation figured out here quickly because Thomas Saggese looked really good when he was up here. And then, we got to talk about the fact that your number one pick is quickly knocking at the door to be in the major leagues. JJ is going to be here before we know it. So the Cardinals have lots of building blocks in the offense. They just really need to figure out what they're going to do at first base.
So here's the weird question, and this probably has no bearing whatsoever on the thought process of some of these guys that are, the Cardinals are wanting to move. But obviously, they have the no trade in their contract, so they have a lot of veto power. But at the same time, I mean, you look at it and you look at the comments that the Contrerases and the Grays have made. Is there some mystique of being in a Cardinals uniform that they maybe throughout their career were not searching for, but if they had in the back of their mind of, if I get a chance to play in St. Louis, I want to play in St. Louis? Because Nolan is one of those guys that had talked at length about playing here and being able to wear the birds on the bat. And again, that's not going to be the main driving factor for a guy not wanting to be traded or anything like that. But is there still some of that mystique of wearing the Cardinal uniform that gets into those guys' heads and says, look, this is the chance I've had and wanted to have of playing in St. Louis in front of these fans and all of that. And I don't necessarily want to give up that chance for the remainder of my career, because I may not be coming back here. If it's not 100% right for me to go somewhere else to a team that has the same sort of level of mystique, I'm going to veto that trade. I mean, again, no trade clause, you got the right to veto, and you're getting a lot of money and all that kind of stuff. But is there still some of that kind of mystique? And if that's the case, how is that battling with the front office of, these guys want to play for this franchise that has been wildly successful, but the current leadership is kind of at odds with what made the franchise so successful in years past?
Yeah, I think there's probably some of that. I think there's probably some of the fact of, hey, I wanted to be a Cardinal. I wanted to wear this uniform, and I don't want to leave and have been here and it be the really down part of the Cardinal run. They've been so successful for so long. I don't want the lasting memory of me being a Cardinal is 3 or 4 years of really bad baseball. I know that's part of Wilson Contreras' thing. He's said it, that he wants to be part of turning this thing back around and getting it to where it was when he was a Cub and going against the Cardinals in that rivalry. So there is some of that there. Sonny Gray, I'm not really sure. Sonny's kind of a weird guy. I mean, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just,
right.
He's just kind of different. I mean, I know a lot of him coming to St. Louis was he wanted to be closer to home, which is Nashville for him. So he's not very far from his wife and kids from their home base. So they don't have to travel too far. They can go back and forth or whatever. And I know that he's friends with Waino, and there was a connection there. So I think Sonny, I think it's more about that. I mean, I think he likes the Cardinal. I think he pitched in Cincinnati. He pitched in Pittsburgh a little bit. He's seen the Cardinal winning tradition. He's seen the fans, wanted to be a part of that, but I think it's also about being home. So I think with him, the only way that he may leave is if somebody like the Braves, somebody like that, is still close to Nashville, would come knocking. Then maybe he'd be willing to move on. With Contreras, I don't really know. I think, he's making good money and he wanted to be here. And, I don't know. I don't know what it would take for Wilson to say, yeah, maybe it's time for me to move on. This isn't the right spot.
Well, if you're trying to follow up the legacy of Yadier Molina, a guy that you kind of looked up to, but also competed very, very well against, you don't want to be the guy that lets that tradition essentially down as well. So I can definitely see why, he wants to make sure that he leaves the Cardinals on a positive note in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, I mean, again, it's not the number one decision why a guy wouldn't want to leave here or help, further his career by going somewhere else. But I got to think that there's something to that as well. And yeah, it's an interesting kind of case study to look at and go, there's still a human element to it all as well. Wainwright was one of those guys that he was here pretty much his entire career. And you see the bulldog competitor that he was, and a guy like Sonny Gray is the same way. So I could see where it gets in the mindset of, this is what Waino said of the organization. I want to be a part of that. Yes, it's close to home as well. I really don't want to leave. So it's a side quest in a sense in the questions, but something I think people have to keep in mind as well is that there is still a mystique around wearing a Cardinal uniform that players, even in this day and age, look at it, if it's a Cardinal uniform, it's a Yankee uniform, a Red Sox uniform, a Cubs uniform, a Dodgers uniform, a Giants uniform. Those are the ones that you look at and you go, if you get a chance to play there and wear that uniform, you want to try and hold on to that as long as you possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are kind of the marquee franchises, the legendary franchises in baseball. So you can definitely see that. Real quick, we were talking earlier about fans getting frustrated with people and wanting to move on and giving up on somebody really quick. A perfect example of a guy that maybe fans felt like he wasn't living up to the hype and they were frustrated and they were ready to move on and ready to give up on, and proof that you don't give up on kids when they're 23, 24, if they haven't lived up to the hype quite yet. Let's talk about old Mr. Liberatore, because Matthew Liberatore, one of the only pitchers in baseball to go at least 6 innings in every one of his starts. That streak did break the other day, but not because he pitched poorly, because of a rain delay. And he only went 3 innings the other day, but he was one of the only pitchers in baseball to go at least 6 innings in every start up to that point and be really quality with just a 3.1 ERA going into his start the other day. He's looked like the guy that we've been waiting for, and everybody wanted him to be that top prospect immediately because Randy Arozarena went to Tampa and was really good right away, and you weren't getting the results from Liberatore. He was still in the minors, and then he got up here and he struggled. But the thing that, people that watch baseball every day, and we talked about, sometimes it takes pitchers a little bit longer, and sometimes for whatever reason, it takes left-handed pitchers even a little bit longer than that to figure it out. And while it seems like we've been waiting for Matthew Liberatore forever, the kid just turned 25. And he's figured it out. He's, like I said, he's thrown 6 innings in all of his starts. He's gotten into the 7th 3 times. He's figured out how to make his velocity last. That was his big problem the last couple of years. He would get into the 3rd or 4th inning and his velocity would drop. He's gotten to the point now where he's in the 7th inning and he's still hitting 95, 96 with his fastball. And that curveball and that changeup that we heard so much about when the Cardinals traded for him, that he had the best changeup in the minor leagues, it's showing itself. And he's throwing strikes. He's only walked 3 batters and combined so far this year. He only had 1 going into the game in Cincinnati the other day. That's awesome. I mean, the kid has figured it out, and he's looking like, is he an ace? I'm not going to go that far yet, but he's looking like he could definitely be a 2 or a 3 for sure, with the potential to maybe be that ace in another year or so.
Well, and kind of going back to the point about the length it takes some of these pitchers to get into the right rhythm and routine, the fact that he was kind of balanced between being stretched out as a starter, being in the bullpen, doing long relief, going to the minors, coming back up to the majors. I mean, not being able to settle into a consistent routine, that also has a little bit of that play in that. I mean, he was successful out of the bullpen last year because he was in the bullpen pretty much the entire year. So you started to see that consistency build. And now the fact that he's getting consistent starts, you're seeing that build as well. And you look at it, you got a .97 whip. I mean, that's a pretty respectable stat there for a guy that's really just getting his first full look at a starter at the major league level. And it also goes to show you that you also can't look at the record as well. He's got a 2-3 record, but the quality with which he's pitching is right there at the top of the league. And in some instances, it's that his offense has let him down. And again, that goes back to us talking about the ping-ponging. When the pitching is good, the offense hasn't been great. When the offense has been great, the pitching hasn't been quite at the level that you want it to be as well. So, I think that'll continue to even out as the season goes on. But it's good to see, because now you look at can anybody tell me, what is Randy Arozarena doing right now in the major leagues? I mean, you don't hear him being talked about as prevalently as you did back after the trade was made, because it was one of those, star moments. He burned bright, he burned fast, and while he's still playing a decently consistent game, it's not at the level that he was when the trade was made and he burst out onto the scene. Now you're starting to see Liberatore, with the work that he's been putting in and getting to this point and getting the opportunity. Now you're seeing the fruits of that one. And that's why you can't judge these trades, especially for current major league players, for prospects, until a couple of years down the road when they get their chance to rise through the minor league system and then get their chance at the major league level.
Yeah, and here's a funny little stat too, just to throw this out there. The year that Randy Arozarena broke loose in Tampa, you know how old he was? He was 25. How old is Matthew Liberatore right now? He's 25. Weird how some guys, you have to get into that 24, 25-year-old range before you finally figure it out. So, again, all those people that wanted to run Matthew Liberatore out of town and, he's nothing more than a mop-up guy in the bullpen. And blah, blah, blah. The kid's proven it wrong. And I've gotten a chance to sit down and talk to Matthew quite a few times. I've done the winter warm-up with him 3 different times and just sat and talked. And could not be a nicer kid, more engaging kid, just a really good person. So hopefully he will continue to grow and fans will start to really embrace him as a big part of this rotation over the next few years.
And not everybody's going to be the 18-year-old phenom that can come right in and produce. And yes, he was the number 1 pitching prospect in Tampa. May have been the number 1 prospect overall in their system. But again, you also have to look at the systems as well. What would be a number 1 in one franchise, it may be a number 12 in another farm system. So yeah, you can have numbers next to guys' names, but you've got to see what the development process looks like and all the things that go around that person's development to see what they could potentially become and give them the leeway to grow into that role. And that's when you look at what the Cardinals have done as far as, signing veteran pitching and not necessarily rushing some of these young players forward. This is one of those moments that you look at and you go, okay, I can kind of understand what they were doing because it did allow a guy like Liberatore to pitch in the minors, got to come up here. He got to struggle. He got to see what the major league level was like and then fix it, what he needed to fix and all of that. So we all bitch and moan about all the veterans that they sign and not giving young players opportunities. In some cases, there is a method to the madness, and it seems to have worked here in this instance. We'll see if it works in other instances, but you can't basically paint a cross in one stroke and say, this is how it is for everybody, positive or negative. You have to kind of pick and choose the battles. And in this instance, the battle that Mo faced in this one, it looks like he might be winning in this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about young phenom pitchers. Real quick, he wasn't a Cardinal phenom, but there was a former phenom pitcher in St. Louis on Saturday. He was in town all weekend at the ballpark. But on Saturday at Maggie O'Brien's, he did a little meet and greet, and people got a chance to hear his story and take pictures and sign autographs with him. Doc Gooden was in town on Saturday doing a meet and greet at Maggie O'Brien's and was roaming around the ballpark all weekend. I got to say hi to him on Friday night. And Doc still looks like he can still throw the ball up there pretty quickly.
I did not know he was in town. That would be a fun person to talk to just because of everything that surrounded his career in his time, especially in New York. That is pretty cool. I wonder, just traveling with the Mets then? Is that what he's doing?
Yeah, he was in town, and his good friend and former teammate Darryl Strawberry lives in St. Charles. Yep. I heard rumors that Strawberry maybe was going to show up at that thing on Saturday. I'm not sure that he did or not. I didn't hear, but if anybody got a chance to go meet Doc and just hear some stories, because just to hear the stories about that 86 Mets team, as good as they were and as dysfunctional as everything that was going on around that ball club, because that was right in the heyday of the cocaine issues in baseball, and there was a lot of that cocaine and alcohol flowing around those 86 Mets teams. So to hear some of the stories from those teams would have been pretty interesting if anybody got the chance to do that on Saturday.
Yeah, especially if they can remember the stories from that time frame
right.
as well.
Absolutely.
I want to touch on one other pitcher on this Cardinals team that I actually think has been somewhat surprising and has been a bit of a whipping boy the last couple of years. And I got to say, Miles Mikolas, and I might get yelled down about this, but he's actually kind of settled into a system that works for him right now. He got blown up in Boston. We know that. We saw that. And he ended up giving up 3 runs in his next start against Philadelphia. But he's only given up 2 runs in his last 3 starts. He's made it into the 6th inning twice in those starts. One time got into the 7th, I believe. And he's only given up more than 2 runs twice this year. It was that Boston game and that Philadelphia game. So you look at it and you go, he's 1-2. He's got a 4.66 ERA, a 1.34 WHIP. The guy just can't pitch anymore. I had to sit there and look and go, at least right now, he's not been bad and has done what he needed to do in the role that he is in right now. Is he a top 2 starter on this team? No, he's a 4. He needs to be the 4. But he's putting up 4-spot numbers. And I think that's something that you kind of have to look at and say, for all the complaining we've done, we've got to at least give Michaelis some credit that at least in the last handful of games, he has done the job that he needs to do.
Yeah, no, he absolutely has. Like you said, he was awful in that Boston game. It was like, oh man, that could be the undoing of Miles Michaelis right there. But to his credit, like you said, he's bounced back and he's figured some things out. He's still not missing a whole lot of bats, but he's getting weak contact, and he's getting the guys to hit weak contact at people, which is what he's got to do to be successful, because he just doesn't have the stuff at this point in his career to throw the ball past people anymore. So as of right now, it's worked out pretty well. Like you said, he's a fourth starter, and he's done a decent job at that. And you got to give Miles credit, because he has worked really hard to try to figure out how to fix things. And, I'll be honest, I've been one of the harshest critics of his the last couple of years. But to Miles' credit, he has a great personality, a great sense of humor, and he is fully aware that he has not been good, and he's willing to embrace that and talk about it and kind of make fun of himself for the fact that he's not been what he's needed to be the last couple of years. And so you have to give him some credit for that, and he's worked really hard, and he has been better so far. Hopefully that can continue as we go down the stretch, because this team is better if Miles Michaelis can give you 5 or 6 innings every fifth day and be that guy, because one thing he's done, even when he's been bad the last couple of years, is he's given you innings.
That he has, and that's something that, this team at some point will need. And you also have to sit there and hope that, not only, and I know that Michaelis will be the one that would sit down and give, advice and insight to. You just hope that a guy like Eric Fetty is seeking out that advice as well, considering they both have kind of traveled the same path in their careers. Came in, got blown up, moved, went to Japan, pitched there, came back, saw some early success, and now starting to struggle here just a little bit. So you're hoping that there are those conversations between those two to kind of help Fetty get into a better sense of mind going into the remainder of this season, because he's a guy that, before the season, people were saying you should trade him. You got to get the best value for him that you can right now. And looking at the way he's pitched this year, people are going, why didn't you trade him when you got the chance? Because he hasn't been all that great. But again, early in the season, you hope that the conversations can happen between him and Michaelis that will allow him to kind of reset himself and make sure that he finds a way to be successful throughout the remainder of the season.
Yeah, and he's been really inconsistent so far, too, because he's had a couple of really good starts. He had the game in Pittsburgh where he only gave up 1 hit through 7 innings that, ended up going into extra innings at 0-0. That was a really good game. His first couple starts at home on that opening homestand were good. He got lit up in Boston. He's had a couple of struggles since then. So he's had some good starts. He's had some not so good starts. Just got to find a way to be more consistent. Another guy who we've ripped on the last couple of years because he just has not been able to stay healthy. You got to give Steven Matz some credit too, because he's bounced around this first month of the season. He's been in the rotation. He's been in the bullpen, but he's answered the bell every time they've given him the ball. He's given them big innings out of the rotation, out of the bullpen when they needed him to. And for the most part, he's pitched pretty well.
He certainly has. And you can't say that this team doesn't want to go out there and try to make things happen positively. You're not seeing drooping shoulders. You're not seeing heads getting put down. This team is playing together, and you hope that things start to move in a positive direction for them. And you know what? This is going to be a weird thing to say, but maybe you can draw some parallels to what the Blues did this year. They came into the season with a coach that everybody was like, really? This is what you're going with? And then they had a guy in mind that at the time was under contract with another team, but as soon as he was let go, they pounced. I don't think you're going to see the same sort of parallel with this team, but if this program had a guy in mind that they wanted to take this franchise into the future, and at the start of the season he wasn't ready or he wasn't available, but becomes available or his time opens up here in the next month or so, would you be shocked if a move was made that was very similar to what the Blues did, to where a good team is struggling and a new voice might be needed? Do you see them even considering making a move in season to bring in a guy that they want to have as the future of this team?
Not really. I think they're going to wait and run this out with Ollie because I think they want Heim Bloom to have the opportunity to pick his guy. If they make a managerial change, I think they want him to be fully in charge and him to have total control over who that next hire would be. I'm not 100% sure that would happen this year with Mo still here and how all of that dynamic would work. So, I mean, it would have to be a really special situation, I think, for that to happen. So I don't really see it. I honestly, and I've said this before, I honestly think that the next manager, I think they know who the next manager is going to be. I think he's in waiting. I think he became a non-manager this year and took a front office job at another organization because he knew that the job that he really wants is potentially there for him next year. And I'm beating around the bush, but if anybody knows what I'm talking about, his name would be Skip Schumacher. With the coaching staff that they have in place with John Jay and Daniel Descalzo and things along those lines, I really believe Skip's going to be the next guy.
And that's kind of the only reason I even considered it being similar to the Blues situation is because there were talks in the offseason that it could be a possibility. And the fact that he was even considered to be maybe a bench coach option or things of that nature, that's the only reason I kind of had that in my mind of maybe that's the same situation for the Cardinals where right now Skip's not available, but if the time happens and things line up, then they make that same sort of move. But I understand your point too, in the fact that it's still kind of, you got a lame duck general manager in a sense, and you've got a new guy that's waiting in the wings to take over, even though he's already here. So it just feels like it would be that end of season. Let's get started with a new regime and a new mindset going into next year.
And I mean, like I said, the coaching staff is already in place. You have his outfield coach and one of his best friends, and John Jay, on the coaching staff. You have Daniel Descalzo, who is also one of his closest friends on the coaching staff. Your hitting coach that became your hitting coach this year is a close friend of Skip's and was his hitting coach in Miami. He didn't take a managerial job. He took a front office job with the Rangers, which allows him to see how another winning organization, they won the World Series 2 years ago, he can kind of evaluate what they do, see how they do things, bring that back. It just seems to me like it makes a whole lot of sense that if you're going to make that move, Skip's the guy, and we all know that Skip would love to come back to St. Louis and fill that role.
Well, we'll see what happens there. It's still a long season here this year, so maybe Ollie does a bunch of moves and makes something happen and potentially saves his job if it's even in danger. We'll see how that plays out. So Friday night was a big night in St. Louis sports. You had the Blues playing at home. You had the Cardinals playing at home. You had the Battlehawks playing at home. And we know the almighty dollar is stretched right now. And the fact that, you had three major sporting events, and yes, I'm lumping the UFL as a major sporting event. I don't know why, but here it is. But you had three hometown teams playing at home at the same time in one night. And I was looking at the numbers as far as attendance was concerned for those games, and it was absolutely mind-blowing to me, the numbers that were put up on Friday night. Blues sold out Enterprise, 18,000 plus fans in the stands. Cardinals, just a shade under 28,000. Now, obviously, that's not the numbers that they're used to pulling in, but still, for a Friday night for a team that is somewhat struggling against a Mets team that's pretty good, but with two other events going on, that's still a decent number. And then just a little under 27,000 at the Battlehawks games. You had 72,000 people downtown in St. Louis on Friday night attending sporting events. That is an incredible testament to this city that despite all of the issues that are going on right now, the fact that money is tight in some instances, yet they're still going out into downtown to support these teams and these players. That's just absolutely incredible and shows you the spirit of St. Louis when it comes to sports.
Oh, absolutely. And, you got to look at the fact, too, the Cardinals crowd was low because, like you said, not winning as well. Attendance has been down. Plus, you got to look at the fact that there was a chance of rain. It was cold last night in downtown. So that hurt the numbers a little bit. But you take that 72,000 and then you take the other 10,000 that were in Ballpark Village watching games on television. Yeah, it was a good sports night in St. Louis. And anybody that questions whether St. Louis is a sports city has never been here for a sporting event, because anybody that actually understands the world of sports, and especially professional sports, knows what a huge sports city this is and how if there's an event, fans will show up.
Yeah, they certainly will. And I know you get firsthand experience with that working down at Busch Stadium with the Cardinals. And, we were joking around that, you're lucky that you got a chance to get down there early enough that you didn't have to worry about any of the traffic going down there. And you probably didn't have to worry too much about the traffic going home either.
No, well, traffic coming home was still pretty heavy. Even getting down there. I was down there because I had to run around and do a few things. So I got back downtown about 4:00, I guess, and it was already heavy. There were people everywhere. Traffic was already heavy downtown. It took me, I don't know, probably from the time I got off at Memorial Drive to actually get to the ballpark and park. It probably took me 15 minutes to go those 2 or 3 blocks. And that was 3.5 hours before game time. So yeah, people were out, people were downtown, and that's huge for the city. It's huge for the restaurants to have all those people mulling around downtown, and it's a big deal, to have the Battlehawks play, to have the Blues in the postseason, to have the Cardinals winning, because it brings so much money to all those restaurants that have struggled the last couple of years because, starting with COVID and then the fact that teams haven't been really good and we haven't had a whole lot of postseason, it's really hurt the restaurant business, the hotel business, everything downtown. So, when the sports teams are playing and multiple teams are playing and they're playing well, it's just a huge boost for the economy downtown.
Well, let's hope that the Cardinals can turn it around just a little bit, get some more fans downtown. Hopefully the Blues can continue on in the Stanley Cup playoffs. You got the UFL championship coming here, and you hope that the Battlehawks are in it, but regardless, it's still going to bring in fans for whichever 2 teams are in that as well. City is still obviously in action, and they, again, have also struggled a little bit. So you hope that they can turn things around a little bit as well and help bring some more fans downtown. So, there's still some positives. There's still some way to go when it comes to, bringing even more downtown. But, with things changing the way they are right now, maybe that does help bring some life back into downtown. You've got a bunch of construction projects that are, getting started or getting ready to get started as well as they try to revitalize the downtown area as well. So, just continue to support as much as you possibly can, especially those smaller businesses, the restaurants, the mom and pops, just the smaller shops that are down there, just to continue to help them survive and succeed so that, when the big crush does hit, they're ready for it. They're still there and they're still able to kind of give you that sense of that small town, big city feel, because that's what St. Louis is. It's a big city, but it still does have that small town Midwestern feel even when you're down there.
Oh, absolutely. And you talked about, all the work, all the construction that's either started or getting ready to start. People don't realize what a huge boost that's going to be for downtown when the old Millennium Hotel gets torn down and that renovation starts. That's going to be huge when the old famous bar building that's deteriorated to a really decrepit point, which is sad because it's one of the oldest buildings in the city. When that's renovation starts, that's going to be huge. There's the Shoto Landing right there before you get to the Arch, the old church, and those buildings that they're getting ready to start working on. So there's millions of dollars in renovation and revitalization about to happen downtown in the next 4 or 5 years, which is going to be exciting to see.
That it certainly is. Certainly is. Well, we've rambled on long enough for you, and we're hoping that you're enjoying a potential Blues Game 7 victory. We hope that the Cardinals have swept the doubleheader against the Mets today, but because we're recording this on a Saturday, we don't really know. So hopefully you are having a positive Sunday. We've got more weather in the forecast this week, but we still have some action going on during this week involving the Cardinals and maybe the Blues. So we hope that we get some more stuff to talk about heading into next week's show. I will say this. We've at Lindenwood got SLU coming in for baseball on Tuesday, and Mark McGuire's son plays for SLU. So if you want to come out and see the offspring of Mark McGuire, come on down to Lindenwood for that game on Tuesday at Lou Brock Sports Complex, and you can see, Mark McGuire's son, see what he can do against a Lindenwood team that's actually, I think, surprising some people in the OVC.
That's good to hear. Have you had a chance to see Max lately? Because that kid, he's not the monster that his dad was, but he's not a small man, and he can definitely launch some baseballs.
I have not seen him in the flesh yet. We will on Tuesday, but as I was going through setting up spreadsheets and stuff for the game, you get to see pictures, and he is not the Mark McGuire size, but you look in the face and you look in the body structure and you go, yep, that is definitely a McGuire.
Yeah, he's kind of the McGuire USC days size. He's kind of got that build that his dad had, and in the early Oakland days, people forget before Mark got big, and everybody wants to blame steroids, but Mark was not a real big man when he came up in Oakland, and he was still hitting 48. He still has the rookie home run record, 49 home runs his rookie year.
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely a skilled player, and You can't, and again, that goes back to the conversations you have about Barry Bonds too. I mean, before he started, producing the huge numbers he was putting up on allegedly on steroids, we know, he was still a Hall of Fame caliber player, and I think that both of those guys, if the sport hadn't gone the way it had, their trajectory still would have put them into Hall of Fame territory. So. I mean, it is what it is. That's an argument for another day because that one could go for a whole show or two.
Right. Yeah. I will say though, Barry was probably a better all around player in those days before his head got 3 times bigger. That's all we'll say about that. But yeah, Barry was super talented with or without any enhancements.
That he certainly was. Well, Scott, what do you got going on this week that maybe we can catch you on, or maybe just see you around the ballpark?
I will be at the ballpark. Today I'm at the ballpark right now. So as you're watching this, I'm still at the ballpark as we're in the second game of a doubleheader. Hopefully we're sweeping the Mets today. Hopefully the rain stayed away. I will also be at the ballpark Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. The Pirates are in town. It's going to be rainy and cool. So there's probably really good seats. So if you're watching this, plan to come down to the ballpark, roll around the first base box. You might see me hanging out. So come down to the ballpark and watch the Cardinals take on the Pirates this week.
Yeah, and then we've got Mother's Day coming up next weekend as well. So a preemptive happy Mother's Day to everyone out there. And hopefully it's a nice weekend. We hope that the rain will stay away and that you guys have sunshine and just a beautiful day next week. Well, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. For Scott Tobin, I am Michael Wagon Connect saying so long from the Tavern. We will see you next week.